Just like how I will never understand how anyone could look at Ben Shapiro and decide that they were going to listen to him about masculinity.
So a couple of obvious stipulations up front. Men have always done cross-dressing. There have always been some segment of men who cross-dress. Very often it was played for comedy. And the entire premise of Some Like It Hot is that it is funny when men cross-dress. That is not what the Harry Styles photo shoot is about.
Throughout history, gender has not been binary. Natives here in America made trans people chiefs. In India, trans people would be gurus because they had both souls. He is discussing a very Western idea of masculinity.
Right? There have been pop stars who have done this before. David Bowie wearing a dress. They always look like idiots, by the way. They always look ridiculous. But the whole point is to be transgressive. Right? But what we are seeing with the Vogue article is not just an attempt to be transgressive, obviously. It's an attempt to redefine masculinity itself.
Also, I didn't show it last night on the show. I'm not even really sure who Harry Styles is. I think he's from One Direction, if I'm not mistaken. This was his Vogue cover. It's like he's got pants on under the dress. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Here's another shot. And that's not even a dress, that's a kilt. And I know some Scottish people that would punch Ben Shapiro in the face for calling it a dress. But, like, I don't know about you guys, but I think Harry Styles looks a lot more manly than Ben Shapiro, even in a dress. But don't get it wrong. Ben Shapiro loves stories like this. Ben Shapiro gets a lot of play. I am thoroughly convinced that he does shit like read the lyrics to WAP or talk about Harry Styles in a dress. Because one, it's good red meat for his base. Be transphobic, homophobic, against the gender non-binary folk out there. But two, it gets people like me, it gets the Majority Report, it gets the leftist media making fun of him, and in turn helps boost his numbers. My opinion on the claims that there is voter fraud. Well, those claims are bullshit, and Trump's own lawyers have stated that in court, so...
I mean, this is overt in the article. I'm not making it up. I already read you the segments from the Vogue magazine article. Okay, so my friend Candace Owens tweets out, quote, "There is no society that can survive without strong men. The East knows this. In the West, the steady feminization of our men, at the same time that Marxism is being taught to our children, is not a coincidence. It is an outright attack. Bring back manly men."
I want one of these dumb fucks to tell me what Marxism means. I don't think a one of them can define it. The steady feminization. How does Marx's critique of capitalism have anything to do with steady feminization? And what's wrong with feminization to begin with? I don't understand. And bring back manly men. Harry Styles is way more manly than Ben fucking Shapiro.
Okay.
Maybe not Candace Owens, though.
What exactly is controversial about this, that masculinity is a good and important thing when channeled properly. It requires men to defend family. It requires men to provide. It requires men to channel their aggressive instincts towards defense of values and civilization. It requires assertiveness. Aristotle talks about masculinity in exactly these sorts of terms. Harvey Mansfield has an excellent book called Manliness, all about masculinity and what distinguishes it from femininity. Now, it's not that the left doesn't acknowledge these are qualities. The left fully acknowledges the qualities of masculinity and femininity, right? Which is why they suggest that there are a wide variety of genders because they
I constantly tell people, keep talking, you'll get your fucking face punched by a guy wearing sparkly fingernail polish.
suggest that a man can be very feminine, and this actually makes him a woman, right? So they agree that this means that there is such a thing as masculinity and femininity. They then just suggest that men should act like women, right? That masculinity should be made more feminine.
What does it mean to act like women? These are gender normative roles that we have invented. What does it mean to act like women? I don't understand, especially in a guy. And a guy that's talking in this kind of voice is telling us all about masculinity. Hold on. Hassan Piker had a great fucking tweet. Ben, you're 5'3", can't grow facial hair, and weigh 100 pounds soaking wet. If we can both be considered men, you should probably be a bit more open-minded about gender expressions. It's clearly not as rich in a binary as you try to imply it is. Hassan's awesome.
Men more feminine when you suggest that men need to be like women. They need to wear dresses, right? That this undermines some fundamentally
No. Nobody is saying you need to wear a dress. I think what people on the left, the open-minded free thinkers of us, say, who gives a shit if you wear a dress? Wear a dress if it makes you feel good. Do it. Who cares?
Men. In the same way that if you said that women ought to act like men, it's funny. If you say that women ought to act more like men, this is considered sexist because it actually is sexist. But if you say that men ought to act more like women, this is considered progressive and forward thinking.
Who says that?
Feminized men is ongoing on the left. Okay, so this prompted me to defend Candace's comments. And I said, this is perfectly obvious. Anyone who pretends it is not a referendum on masculinity for men to don floofy dresses and then be celebrated by magazines like Vogue is gaslighting you. Masculinity and femininity are categories. They exist. Right? Some behavior is more masculine, like punching people in the face. Some behavior is more feminine, like wearing floofy dresses.
I know plenty of women that would punch him in the fucking face. What is he talking about, this referendum? This guy is acting like there's going to be some fucking army that's going to march into his studio and make him wear a dress. By the way, his wife is a doctor, in case you didn't know.
Right, there are many different forms of masculinity and femininity. The most important form of femininity is bearing and rearing children. Okay, that is something that is endemic biologically to female mammals of all species, is bearing and rearing their young, right? And it is endemic for men and males of all mammalian species to be more aggressive, right? These are just biological realities. To pretend that they are social constructs entirely is completely idiotic and anti-scientific and anti-evidentiary. Masculinity and femininity do exist. And not only that, how does this tie into the whole dress conversation? Outward indicators of masculinity and femininity exist in nearly every human culture, right? We train little boys to be masculine and we train little girls to be more feminine. We try to...
Thank you. Train. You hit the nail on the head. This is not a natural concept. It doesn't occur in nature, Ben. It is a human construct, you dumb fuck.
Breed out of them the toxicity of masculinity or the toxicity of femininity. We try to use civilization to civilize children, but boys are boys and girls are girls, right? And these are important things. Boys ought to be allowed to act like boys. Girls ought to be allowed to act like girls.
It's not a binary thing, motherfucker. By you saying boys and girls, you are eliminating a whole, it's quite a few people. There's a whole group of people that don't fit into those categories. Whether they be born with no sex organ, born with both sex organs, born with penises that are so small, doctors think they're clits. Born with clits so big that doctors think they're penises. Just because the vast majority of people fall within 2 standard deviations of the mean in the normal curve doesn't mean that that's the default. Ben, that's some statistical analysis for you. Where's your fucking science that you claim to have?
Boys are taught to be more masculine in virtually every human culture. This is not a Western-centered thing. Boys are taught to be more masculine in virtually every human culture because the role of men is not, in fact, always the same as the role of women. There can be crossover. Men and women can do very many of the same jobs. But to suggest that men and women are identical and they are widgets created by social conditioning is just bullcrap.
Nobody suggested that.
It's scientifically true. It is a violation of actual scientific biology. There are differences between men and women.
Whoa, what? Mario Lopez is getting fired because he was being interviewed in the topic of young kids getting gender changes? He rightly said parents are crazy. I don't know. Well, first of all, I don't think kids are getting gender changes. That's not true. Some children get puberty blockers so that they can make that decision when they get older. That's perfectly fine. I did not know about the Mario Lopez thing though. Let's Google it. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's Bing it. When did this happen? I'm not seeing anything about it. But what if that's what Mario Lopez said? That is transphobic, and it's misinformed. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and we shouldn't tolerate that as a culture. That's a straw man argument. That never happens. I don't know what to tell you. And if you look up gender dysphoria in the DSM, you will see that the treatment for gender dysphoria is to transition. Puberty blockers are incredibly safe. I would say that Mario Lopez shouldn't talk about shit that he doesn't know about. And that's with everybody. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't make stupid comments. You won't get in trouble.
On the broad range. That does not mean that there's not, again, men who act more like women or women who act more like men. They're not more effective.
With control, it's easy to take the knowledge you already have.
Damn it.
And
All right, back to Ben.
Right, all of that exists. But the fact that there is a spectrum of human biology does not mean there are not poles. There are indeed poles.
Thank you. He acknowledges it's a spectrum. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. It's not a pole. It's a normal curve. Like all naturally occurring traits. They are distributed on a normal curve, Ben. There's not poles.
Right, as in P-O-L-E-S, there are poles, masculine and feminine. The left knows this. In fact, the point of the Harry Styles photo shoot is to violate those poles, right? Is to feminize masculinity. Olivia
No!
herself. The idea is to rethink masculinity as femininity, to feminize men.
No! I think the point of a Harry Styles photo shoot is that motherfucker likes wearing dresses. He's a creative person. He's very in his own head. Much like I wear fingernail polish on stage. It's just him being him and expressing himself. And you're reading too much into it. Like it's the fall of fucking Western civilization or some shit. God damn.
To get rid of toxic masculinity by suggesting that men should act like women. Otherwise, it would not be headline worthy for Harry Styles to put on a dress. Right? If it were just about Harry Styles, again, playing with dress the way he says that it is, then he would have dressed up as a giant baby in a diaper with
I don't think it's headline worthy that he dressed up in a dress to begin with. The only reason I'm talking about it is because dumb fucks like you talked about it. And this will probably be one of my most watched videos on YouTube because shit like this tends to get a lot of views.
with a pacifier, right? Like, he's not doing that. He's dressing up in a woman's gown because he's attempting to make a point, which is that men should be more like women. Right? And the left knows this. They know this. They openly say that
you should let children choose their gender identity.
Constructed. Right?
You shouldn't force them to play with pink toys or blue toys. Or to play with trucks if you're a boy, or dolls if you're a girl. It's okay to play with dolls if you're a man or a boy. There are such things as tomboys. We have a very skewed understanding, and Ben even admitted it. all these norms are just constructs. And a lot of it is society forcing it on people. And there are so many people who are repressed. That's why suicide rates are so high in the LGBT community. Because society tells them they're wrong or they're sinners or some shit. But they're just wanting to express themselves as free individuals. And idiots like Ben Shapiro have a problem with it.
They say that gender is actually inborn, but also socially constructed, right? They want it both ways. They say that gender is a social construction, and that femininity is just men cramming down the patriarchy on women. But they will also say that gender, which is the manifestation of biology, right? But they don't think so. They think the gender is just your femininity or masculinity is actually inborn and inherent to you. So they say that a man can be a woman, even though there's no biological underpinning. So gender is real, but also it's socially constructed.
Well, he's wrong on that. The brains of trans people are different. Sorry, Ben. Get your science straight. Thought your wife was a doctor. Didn't you go to Harvard?
It's all self-contradictory. But let's assume for a second the honesty of some folks on the left who at least acknowledge that femininity and masculinity exist. They also have indicators, outward indicators. Dress has been, for virtually all time and in virtually all cultures, an outward indicator, which is why the Bible explicitly says that
dress has been forced on people. And I'm glad that I was trying to pause it before that, but hey, he brought up the Bible. Yeah, it's been a religious thing. The way you dress has been forced on you by religion.
it is against cross-dressing, for example. Okay, but in virtually every culture, men and women dress differently. This does not mean that all men dress the same and all women in all cultures dress the same. It means that in every culture, there is a distinction between how men dress and how women dress. The stupidest form of the argument that I saw yesterday.
You call it a normal opinion. What does normal opinion mean? It's a misinformed opinion is what it is, because I explained it to you. Mario Lopez doesn't know what he's talking about. He said some shit that's transphobic. So, bye-bye. Mario Lopez isn't that funny either.
Yesterday online was, well, in Scotland, they wear kilts. That means that a man in America wearing a skirt, a floofy skirt, is the same as a man in Scotland wearing a kilt. No, because they also distinguish between...
Harry Styles had a kilt on!
Women wear clothes in Scotland, too. It's just that men wear different clothes than men in America. It's the most idiotic thing. People are like, well, yeah, back in Roman times, men wore togas. You understand? Those were basically just dresses. Yes, and women wore a different form of clothing. At the time, women and men were distinguishable by dress. They have always been distinguishable by dress in virtually every human culture. And noting that men wore floofier stuff in the 16th century in Britain does not change the fact that women wore completely different clothing in the 16th century in Britain. Right? This is a category error, you morons, to suggest that because men wore something.
I never said that. You're strawmanning me. Like, I never said that. I said that Mario Lopez was misinformed. I don't think 3-year-olds can decide on much of anything. But yeah, you shouldn't force gender on children. Ben even admitted it. It's a social construct. And there's nobody allowing children to change their gender. Puberty blockers is what we're talking about. They're completely safe. And hey, we have had so many people. That's not what you said Mario was saying. I miscommunication here. I don't understand it. On the topic of young kids getting gender changes, and he rightly said the parents are crazy. But I pointed out, kids aren't getting gender changes. Kids get puberty blockers. That's not gender changes. So that they can make the decision on their own later. And you have to go through a psychological evaluation to have this done. Talk to some trans people, please.